let me tell you a little bit about my background. I grew up on a small piece of land in western Massachusetts. My father was a college professor, but he had grown up in Michigan and always grown his own food, and he was raised in the country, and that was the life that he wanted, and he continued to do that. And we were right next door to a very small dairy farm, and his, maybe, I don't know if it was his sort of Midwestern roots, or the way that he had grown up with a lot of siblings and being close to farms. He established a very close relationship with the dairy farmer next door, and this was a small dairy. They were milking between 15 and 30 cows, depending on the year, and it wasn't organic. They weren't, at that time, organic milk was, not really something that was known. This is the 1970s, but we spent a lot of time there, and I really, I became really enamored by that kind of life, the milking of the cows and the feeding of the cows and throwing hay into the barn, and it was tough, and it was not always the easiest work, and I didn't get paid very much to do it. Sometimes I just did it for free, but it was very fulfilling. And we had a very strong community relationship. We made maple syrup together in the winter, and they plowed our garden, big garden, and put manure on it in the spring, and they plowed our long driveway in the winter, and then we helped them with, if they had a difficult birth for a cow, or if we'd help with the milking sometimes if they got behind. We definitely always helped in haying season, and they taught me a lot too. How to weld, how a carburetor works, and a lot of different skills. Farming is an interesting profession because it's not it doesn't take a singular skill. You have to be a botanist and a veterinarian and an economist and a salesperson and mechanic, and a lot of different things go into it. It's what one beginning farmer that I worked with referred to as sort of the Swiss Army knife profession. That dairy that we lived next to closed down, and it became a lumber yard, and the whole culture changed, the community relationships, and I felt that loss very deeply. And sustainability has always been important to me because I saw, the struggles that the small farmers were going through, and the difficulty that people had staying in business, and the repercussions of small farms going out of business on communities, and on the connection that people have to their food. Part of the struggle that I had when I first came was that there really wasn't any sustainable agriculture happening at Michigan State University, and in the first month, my major professor showed me this flyer for a sustainable ag discussion group. I think there were 4 of us at the first meeting, and it sort of developed, and I was involved in that because I was really frustrated by while I was doing a sustainable project, I was working with asparagus and looking at cultural and biological controls and reduced risk pesticides for controlling root disease. But the community aspect and discussing the politics and really trying to move the sustainable agriculture movement forward, not just through production, but through activism and through an understanding of what the way that farms are connected to the rest of the world in a system, and the way that a farm itself is a system. And so that group actually ended up growing to the point where it became the Michigan State University Student Organic Farm, which is where we are right now. And they are producing on about 10 acres here at the horticulture farm at Michigan State, and that was an idea that came out of that little discussion group that we started. So when I finished my master's degree, I worked for a natural products company in Lansing for 2 years, and that was a great experience. I worked probably in at least half of the United States, testing a product that encouraged beneficial microbes to grow, which decreased the need for fertilizer and other inputs. And that company was sold, but by the end I realized that I didn't want to just be working with a single input. I was more interested in what I had referred to earlier as the system of farming, and that really was what was compelling to me, having come from a place where not just the ecological system, but the community system is a part of thinking about and working with and encouraging the development of healthy and sustainable farms. And so I started a PhD here and have been working with first-generation organic farmers specifically. I was mostly interested in first-generation farmers because first-generation farmers being farmers that didn't grow up on a farm. So, it's hard enough to make a living, and I've worked with a lot of conventional farmers that really struggle. 90% of farmers work off, 90% of farmers have a spouse that works off the farm now for health insurance and extra income, and it's a very difficult living. And that, that's not just organic farms, that's all farms, and that's it's a challenge. So to get into something, when you're not inheriting any land and you don't have the knowledge that is developed through the process of growing up on a farm, it's a much bigger challenge. And I was interested in why somebody would choose to do this, and the values that that takes tend to, I've found through my research, often be related. They're often related to a commitment to ecology and sustainability and self-sufficiency and a lot of the things that go along with traditional organic production. Also, because first-generation farmers are often starting out very resource limited, the organic farm system works well for a lot of them because you get a price premium. It's easier to sell direct to consumers, so you cut out the middle warehouse that sells it to a grocery store or a processor or whatever. It's changed a lot in the time that I've been involved with it, which is only the last 20 years, and yeah, but 20 years isn't that long, in terms of major changes in the culture at Michigan State University. We're sitting in one of 7 or 8. Sure, but change happens slowly, and I do my part, but I'm not the only one, and it's something that takes a lot of committed people and a lot of hard work, and not just in the practice of farming, but also in the political work that it takes to get support for and in the early days, even just respect. It's very difficult for a conventional farmer to. The idea that a 1,000-acre corn farmer in the middle of Iowa, 500 miles from the nearest town of any size, who owns $1.5 million of equipment and is, deeply in debt and working off the farm, could transition to a system like this it's not feasible, and I think that we do see things in black and white a little too much when it comes to farming system. Organic good, conventional bad. I'm pro farmer, and I want agriculture in the United States to survive, and certainly I work very hard to encourage sustainability, and I believe in organic production, but I also believe that that it has to grow slowly, and that there are farmers that work really hard, and I've never met one, and I've worked with a lot of conventional farmers who wants to poison the land and the rivers and doesn't care about the health of the community or the soil or themselves. That's just not it's just not that black and white, and that's part of the reason that my website, www.beginningfarmers.org, tends to be sustainably focused and provides a lot of organic information. My dissertation project, I work with small organic farmers, but that's because that's who a lot of these first generation farmers tend to be. I don't like the fact that the sustainable agriculture community, the organic agriculture community, and the conventional or industrial or whatever you want to call it, mainstream agriculture community see each other as enemies in a lot of ways. Because I think that, in my experience anyway, 90 or 95% of the stuff they have in common. They have the same needs, they're trying to do the same things, they want the same things, they love the land, they love farming, they want to stay in it. It's not an easy business to be in. They struggle to make a living, and they take pride in what they produce, and they do it in the best way that they know how, and they do it in an effort to try to continue to make a living on the farm. And a lot of farmers have gone out of business in the last, if you look at the last 100 years, I think it was over 30% of Americans were employed in agriculture in some capacity, and now it's less than 2%. The Farm Bill, which is it's a significant part of the federal budget. It's somewhere around 2%, I believe. But 65% of that is for nutrition programs. Food stamps, WIC, school lunch programs, WIC being women, infants, and children's. So that's the majority of what that Farm Bill is. The rest of it, it depends on the year, but crop insurance and commodity subsidies and conservation. And the conservation part is pretty new. Range around 12 to maybe conservation is as low as 8%, depending on the year. Maybe, but they're all around 12%. The rest of the programs, research, beginning farmer programs, organic programs that help organic farmers pay for the cost of certification, that pay for organic research, that encourage organic farming through the conservation program, and a number of other things. The National Organic Program itself costs a certain amount of money. All of that fits into this little 2% of the Farm Bill, and I think that has to gradually change. I think that the fact that the top 10% of farm earners, the top 10% of farms in terms of income, get 80% of the subsidies in Michigan, including the conservation subsidies, is problematic. I think that direct payments and basically direct payments, I think, are going to be gone in the next Farm Bill anyway, but they're being sort of moved into this risk management system, which is basically a subsidized insurance system, so that commodity farmers don't don't assume the same amount of risk that a diversified farmer does. And we need to have equitable systems for if we're going to support our farmers. It needs to be done more equitably. There's reasons for that too. It's very, very hard for an agent in the Natural Resources Conservation Service to evaluate the value and the risk associated with a farm that sells 40 crops to 3 farmers markets and 500 CSA members and 3 food co-ops. It's a lot easier to figure out what the risk is and the price is when it's 1,000 acres of corn. There are a number of factors that go into this, and it's not going to be an easy thing to change, but I think it needs to change because right now we're encouraging a certain kind of agricultural production over other kinds of agricultural production. Specifically, we're spending a lot of money on rice, which we don't need to be growing in America anyway. We're spending a lot of money subsidizing corn. We're spending a lot of money subsidizing soybeans, and these aren't things that we directly eat. They end up in a lot of food that isn't particularly healthy for us. A lot of them end up being sent overseas, and and they're often grown in large monocultural, not ecologically diverse systems. And that's not the farmer's fault. That's the way that our agricultural system has developed over the years, and there are reasons for it, as I've tried to explain. And once something has that kind of momentum, it's really hard to change it. But we need to be working on figuring out ways to change it, to encourage more more production of fresh vegetables and more availability of fresh vegetables at a reasonable price. You can buy a cheeseburger at McDonald's that's 400 calories for $1. To grow 400 calories worth of lettuce here, or Swiss chard there, costs a lot more than that. And the government systems that are in place are partly responsible for that, and we need to be encouraging our legislators to support the programs such as organic and beginning farmers. We're looking at one estimate is that 70% of agricultural land will be turned over in the next 20 years. And some of it will go to the next generation, but some of it won't. The kids are becoming doctors, moving to the city, whatever. And we need people to fill that void. The price of oil is increasing, and we don't want to be dependent on foreign oil. And so producing food locally, whether it's corn and soybeans, and we're selling that here and processing it here, and or whether it's fresh vegetables sold at farmers markets. I think we need to be looking towards some inevitabilities in the future with our agricultural policy that's supporting local farmers, that getting to know your local farmer, that visiting local farms, going and buying food at food co-ops at least, but farmers markets, and maybe even trying a CSA share at some point is an important way to support an alternative kind of agriculture. It would be nice if Americans realized that they pay a very small proportion of their disposable income for food, and that paying 20% more for local food that's fresh, that's from somebody that that goes back into your local economy, is a important thing to do, and is an unselfish act, and also in the long run has the potential to benefit all of us.